Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dig into a huge question about Canadian identity, one that honestly sits right at the heart of some of our biggest, loudest political debates. So, can a province, let's say Alberta or Quebec, just hold a vote, get a yes, and pack its bags and leave? I mean, it seems like a pretty basic question of democracy, right? Well, let me tell you, the answer is way more complicated and frankly, a lot more fascinating than you probably think. All right, so let's start with what a lot of people believe. This whole idea of a great provincial escape. It's a really powerful notion, but is it even legally possible? You hear this all the time, from people who are frustrated, from political movements. It's this core belief that, hey, if a majority of us vote to separate, we should be able to. But you know what? There's a huge misunderstanding right at the center of that idea. And here's what it comes down to. A province isn't like a gym membership you can just cancel. It's a fundamental, structural piece of the entire country. To make this super clear, let's try a little analogy. Okay, let's bring this right down to your front door. Imagine trying to apply this whole separation logic to your own house. I know, it sounds weird, but stick with me for a second. Yeah, it sounds completely absurd, doesn't it? You can't just go out on your lawn, stick a different flag in the ground, and declare you're now part of another country. Your neighbors would be confused, the mail would definitely stop, and legally, absolutely nothing would change. And the reason it sounds so ridiculous is because it highlights a really critical legal truth. Owning the house doesn't mean you own the sovereignty of the land it sits on. So let's break that down, right? You might own the building, but you don't own the national sovereignty under its foundation. You can't control the border at the end of your street. You for sure can't just redraw the map of Canada to cut out your property, and you definitely can't just decide federal laws don't apply to you anymore. And that's the exact same boat a province is in. The provincial government runs local stuff, just like you run your household. But it doesn't own the underlying constitutional authority or the national borders that make it part of Canada in the first place. Now, this isn't just some fun little thought experiment. It's all based on some very serious law. In fact, Canada's Supreme Court has already ruled on this exact thing, creating what you could call a constitutional anchor that holds the whole country together. Okay, so the Supreme Court laid out a really clear step-by-step process. First step, they said a province cannot leave unilaterally. That's a flat no. You can't just declare you're out. So what if you have a referendum and get a yes vote? Well, look at step 2. That doesn't automatically create independence either. What it does do is force Ottawa's hand. They are now obligated to sit down and negotiate. But here's the real kicker. For those negotiations to mean anything, you'd have to amend the Constitution itself. And as you can see in that last step, that requires getting the other provinces to agree. It's a huge, massive undertaking. So what this all boils down to is actually pretty simple. A province doesn't get to decide if it leaves. The rest of Canada, through the Constitution, gets to decide if it lets a province go. The power is with the whole country, not just one part. So if the province doesn't hold the keys to its own exit, then who does? Well, this gets us to the basic powers that make a country a country. The federal government in Ottawa controls all the big stuff. We're talking national borders, changing the Constitution, getting recognized by other countries, the military, the money we use, treaties, and most importantly, the actual sovereignty of the land itself. A province handles things like schools and hospitals, but not these nation-defining powers. Now, just to really hammer this point home, let's imagine a crazy scenario. Let's say a province has a referendum, and the result is just absolutely overwhelming. Even with a 99% yes vote, a total landslide, the legal reality does not change. That vote is a massive political statement for sure. It forces everyone to the negotiating table. But it is not a legal get-out-of-jail-free card. The final call still rests with the federal government and that whole constitutional amendment process. So legally, this all seems pretty cut and dried. Which raises the question, why does this idea just not go away? Why do so many people feel so strongly that separation is a real option? Yeah, let's just ask it straight up. If the legal case is so solid, where is all this belief coming from? Well, the answer is all about the powerful mix of human emotions and politics. A lot of the time, people are confusing their very real feelings, their frustration, their strong sense of identity, their political battles, their money worries, with actual legal power. And look, those are all incredibly powerful forces, but they operate in a totally different universe than constitutional law. And really, that's the bottom line. It doesn't matter how powerful the feeling is or how many people share it. Feelings don't get to rewrite the fundamental legal structure of the country. The law is the law. So here's probably the best way to think about it. A province isn't some club you can join and then quit when you feel like it. It's a permanent, structural part of a bigger nation. Its borders belong to Canada, not just to the people who happen to be living there right now. Which kind of leaves us with one last big thought, right? If a province is like an anchor chained to the seabed by the Constitution, it can't just pull itself up and sail away. The only way for that anchor to move is if the entire ship, all of Canada, decides together to pull it up and set a new course. What would it take for that to ever happen? Well, that's a question for another day. Thanks for listening.